Right, so welcome to the, it's a slightly oddly named panel, I think, Maximising the Value of Free Connected TV. It's free, it has no value, but we've interpreted that to mean maximising the value of ad-funded TV, which seems more exciting to everybody. So, we're going to dive straight in. We're going to work our way down the panel. Tell us very quickly who you are and what you do, and tell us where the money is. In other words, if you were running a set of ad-funded channels, or supporting them, where would you see growth in today's connected TV market? Joe.
Okay, hi. I think this is working, if you can hear me. My name's Joe Evea. I'm the founder of Media 16. I founded the business 3 years ago at the start of the pandemic. We are a CTV advertising sales house. We represent 30 publishers. We sell ads and sponsorship on their behalf across a number of fast streaming platforms and on demand. We do sell programmatically, but about 90% of our revenue actually comes from direct sales, so we sell directly to advertisers and their agencies. In terms of where the money is, we firmly believe that FAST is still in its infancy in the UK and Europe, and that will be a place where there will be a considerable amount of growth in those markets. It's very accessible for content owners to create a FAST channel, far more cost effective for them than traditional linear television. And increasingly, it's offering advertisers an opportunity to reach a very targeted audience in a very cost-effective manner that isn't accessible via traditional linear platforms. So our view is FAST is going to be the area of growth, with a caveat. Sorry, I'm going on a bit too long, aren't I? But,
it's okay, it's okay. All good.
With a caveat that there has to be quality control in terms of the content itself, in terms of the way it's scheduled, and in terms of the way the ads are trafficked.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Good answer. We'll come back to FAST. Hitesh, where's the growth in CTV ad revenue?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hitesh Bhatt. I'm the Senior Director of CTV at PubMatic. For those of you who don't know PubMatic, we're an SSP, a supply-side platform. We work with publishers, so including lots of streamers and OTT services, to help them monetize their inventory programmatically. My role is really to develop the EMEA CTV strategy and then usher that through the business. Where's the money? There's a few areas where the money is, gladly. I mean, traditional TV for a streamer is definitely where a lot of the money is, but, bringing up the M word, measurement is absolutely critical, right? So if you're a streamer, just get involved with one of the many independent measurement opportunities out there, whether that's Project Origin, whether that's Barb's efforts in this space. In the States, there's the JIX. It's really critical that advertisers can understand their kind of TV planning holistically, which includes streamers, it includes traditional TV. So if you're not involved with that, you're going to miss out there. I would say explore biddable in terms of programmatic. So that means introducing auction dynamics into the way you trade your media. And that can help with unsold inventory or less demanded inventory. It can also help push up the price of more premium inventory. So that's certainly an avenue to look at. And lastly, just explore other areas. TV and CTV often is used as a kind of branding method, but there's performance, there's DTC. So look into how you can address those markets.
Cool. We'll come back to some of those, I suspect. Thank you. Hayley?
Perfect. Hi, I'm Hayley Cochrane, Vice President of Digital and Advanced Ad Sales for NBCUniversal Global. That's a mouthful. And my role is to maximize monetization across all of our international digital inventory. Now, as video continues to grow, 50% of that is already via streaming, and that's forecast to get to about 70% in the next 5 years. And when you dive deeper and go within streaming, the vast majority of viewership is already ad-supported. So we've been inviting our advertisers in from day one with Peacock, which is why Peacock is the fastest growing streamer in the US in 2022. We doubled our paid-for subscribers in year over year, and increased our monthly active users by 400% in the last 2 years. But the most important thing about that is that 90% of that audience is ad-supported. They chose to be ad-supported. Now, there's a guiding principle behind that. Linear plus digital, linear plus streaming together is a growth business. And when you add those two categories together, we saw revenue growth. And obviously, you've got to manage the pivot from one to the other. But it's why we created one platform, because if you have a linear only or a streaming only, approach, you're going to miss out on your total audience. So one platform is essentially geared towards maximizing audience sale, aggregating audience scale, whilst viewership, fragments and migrates across screens. So we fully encourage our audiences to buy linear and streaming together because you maximize audience reach. So one platform reaches 227 million people in the US and 1 billion people around the world. So it's really exciting, not just for us, but the whole ecosystem.
Cool, thank you, Hayley. Katie.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Katie Coteman. I run the ad sales team for Warner Brothers Discovery, also very long, in the UK and Ireland, and a bit of international as well. And our main streaming product in the UK is a product called Discovery Plus. It's a subscription product, but we actually have 3 tiers, which are all ad supported to varying degrees. Where's the growth? I mean, I think it's quite interesting. I'm probably going to be in slight contradiction to you here, Hayley, I think, at the moment, which is, I think particularly in the UK, TV is sort of eating its own lunch a little bit at the moment. So AV budgets are fairly have been sort of slightly challenged for a while now. And there's a risk that if you trade too much, your CTV with your linear, that you're just moving the same money round and round and round. So although we're definitely talking to AV teams, we think the growth is in talking to digital teams as well. And as Alex said in an earlier panel, we're very much demand agnostic, so we trade quite a lot programmatically as well as direct. And it's about trading in the way that advertisers and agencies want to. I think the growth issue is there's just too much out there. There are too many products. There's not enough measurement. It's really hard to plan across them. So I think we've still got a massive job to do as an industry to try and make this much simpler for people. That's got to be the priority. So that's...
I love it. 4 panelists, 4 very different answers. Let's keep up the theme. Chris.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Edwards, commercial lead at Rakuten Advertising, responsible for the monetization of inventory on Rakuten TV. I'm trying to think of an answer that hasn't been said already, and Katie's nicked all my good stuff there. So I think in terms of growth, the distribution and discoverability is going to be key. So Rakuten has been key in expanding that distribution, not just in the UK, but also across Europe. And in that distribution and discoverability, it's bearing in mind it's a programmatic platform, being able to access multi-market deals through a single source and delivering it effectively rather than dealing with multiple players in each market. So from our perspective, I think it'll be the multi-market growth.
And last but not least, I'm exhausted just on the introductions.
Hi, John.
Paul.
I'll keep it short. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Gubbins. I look after the strategy for a global CTV ad server called Publica. If we take a step back and look at smart TV ownership in the UK, I think just under 70% of homes now have a smart TV or a connected television. That number is going to increase very, very quickly as the cost of those devices come down. And if you look at data and programmatic technology, that's really democratized TV advertising for many, many brands that have historically been digital advertisers or social advertisers. So when we talk about growth, I think budgets from those sectors are going to move into AVOD and fast environments very, very quickly. However, they're not going to do that unless these streaming services create ad breaks that look and feel like traditional TV ad breaks. So you can offer them frequency controls, understanding whether or not they run next to their competitors, knowing what position within the ad pod their ad is actually going to appear. These are all controls that Reese and Jonathan and other people at big UK broadcasts have been able to offer to advertisers for 30 plus years. We can't expect CTV to grow unless we can offer the same basic controls to advertisers.
But you're on a slightly different page than to Katie, because you're suggesting streaming needs to be more like TV. And Katie,
No. In terms of a consumer experience, I think it's absolutely vital, and we are aligned on this, that a streaming experience is the same as a linear ad experience for customers. Because it's good,
budgets,
right?
But targeting different budgets.
Yeah.
Correct, or traditional TV ad budgets. But you have to, if you take all of the best things that an advertiser's had in digital, all of the targeting that Reese was just talking about, but then you also have to be able to offer the same streaming experience that somebody's had sat in front of Coronation Street for the last 20 years. You can't bombard them with the same ad back to back in the same CTV ad break. That just doesn't work anymore.
I guess also because, audiences don't necessarily delineate between, linear and streaming.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we quite quickly delineate between linear and streaming? Because there's lots of stuff on a smart TV, clearly, and it's not all the same in terms of CPMs, in terms of how it's been planned and bought. Joe, how do you think about the different buckets of inventory, just to level set and give us a sense of how you see the ecosystem?
Okay, so I mean, I can talk to FAST. You know that. So you have a very clear linear budgets and big broadcasters that the agencies spend with, and then FAST is essentially OTT. So if you have a TV that's connected to the internet and you watch TV in that way, either through your web browser or through your TV directly, that would be FAST television. And then the interesting area for me and for us as a business is Freeview and the growth in HBB TV, and the fact that now there are around 10 million TV sets via Freeview connected digitally. And that's where you can really start blending linear or traditional TV channels with digital. So we work with a channel called Talking Pictures. They have a linear channel on Freeview, but 10 million people can press red and access an on-demand platform that sits behind that. That's where we're doubling up on the budgets. So we're working with the traditional linear buyers to buy space on the channel itself. And then on the on-demand platform, we're working with the digital teams to buy a similar audience, but one that's slightly different with a more targeted advert.
And just briefly, for the channels you sell, are they expensive or cheap on a kind of CPM basis versus traditional TV?
It's all relative, I think. It depends, because I think I don't believe we're at the stage where, because we don't have BARB really, particularly with FAST, it's very difficult for us to sell very niche audiences other than based on context. So TV is able to sell very niche audiences at very high prices. We have to sell quite broadly.
Right.
But I think our broad adult price is more expensive than a broad adult price on television.
Katie, how do you see price across the kind of pools of inventory available in the CTV ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. I remember Reese once talking about a fruit salad. We're not going to talk about the fruit salad today, but you know, there are differences in the quality of the viewing experience and also the quality of the targeting that you offer an advertiser, and that will impact price. And there are huge variations in prices, but I think actually that's really beneficial again for advertisers and agencies. Sure. Because you know, in this world of auditing and guaranteed pricing, as an agency, you can reach an audience, plan across some of the more expensive and some of the less expensive kind of platforms and deliver a price overall. And that's what TV buying is. I mean, that's fundamentally how we've always bought TV, and that's how we're going to buy CTV, right? So, yeah, it works. If you know, the more targeted, the more expensive, the less targeted, and potentially less great viewer experience, the cheaper.
In the US, the big debate at the moment is about the difference between, say, a very expensive, say, data-driven linear campaign, where when you put on data costs and so on, you might be paying $65 to $85, versus at the other end of the market, you can pick up a CTV campaign sometimes for $15 CPMs. And the question, of course, for buyers is which one delivers better ROI? And that still very much depends on the advertiser, depends on objectives and so on and so forth. Paul, similar in the UK in your view?
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything the panelists have said. Broadcasters know the value of their inventory. They've got 30 plus years of trading data to build their pricing decisions around. However, lots of the smaller AVOD services, fast services, TV manufacturers that are now building advertising businesses don't have 30 plus years of historical pricing data to build assumptions around. Sometimes they don't even have the same direct sales teams that have got deep-rooted agency relationships. So this is where we're seeing those types of streaming organizations lean a lot more aggressively into programmatic, because it's the SSPs like PubMatic, where Hitesh is at, that really helps them discover yield and discover the value of their inventory, where they can set price floors, they can set advertiser controls, and then they can determine what the value in the market is in real time for any particular slot within their ad pods around their ad-supported streaming.
And the really exciting opportunity here, I guess, when we're talking about the growth, is that CTV does let us do something slightly different to traditional linear. So when you talk about Reese, for example, you know, talking about what he's doing with Planet V, a lot of the innovation that ITV is delivering is around streamed inventory, where they can apply data, they can do different types of targeting, etc. Is that broadly how you'd say it, Hayley? I mean, you operate both, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, our whole business strategy in the last few years has been around rallying the whole business and everything around consumers and how they consume media today. So it's building around our one platform offering, which is TV modernized, right? It's putting linear and digital or linear and streaming on the same playing field, because at the end of the day, consumers are going to determine the future of entertainment, because they determine how, when, and where, and what content they want to watch. So we've essentially built this video platform that, well, one of the first of its kind, where you giving marketers access to the whole portfolio of NBCUniversal content, 300 different endpoints, linear across digital, but obviously it's benefiting from the technology capabilities and benefits of the platform. So you've got this TV viewing experience with the personalization of the platforms. And that's all powered by 4, products really. It's data and identity, it's activation and automation, it's measurements innovation, it's ad innovation, it's all of that good stuff. But yeah, our whole business is built around our one platform proposition. So bringing those two worlds together.
So Hitesh, I'm guessing from an innovation and growth point of view, that's pretty much how you see it. You're on the same page as the rest of the panel. This is about bringing digitally driven innovation into the TV space around video inventory delivered via IP, which opens up lots of opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. I think you do have to do that, but you have to be mindful that TV has been around for a lot longer.
Sure.
And there are ways in which it's been worked and traded that are fairly traditional and frankly don't need to change. So it's about trying to bring the two pieces together. It's about educating people who perhaps have only ever planned TV traditionally, and at the same time digital teams to understand a bit more about how TV has been traded. So yeah, it's a bit of all of that really. I think the area around auction-based stuff, I'll bang on about that. That's kind of what we do. Is something that perhaps is a little bit scary for some of the traditional TV businesses. And I think that requires kind of reassurance around things around transparency, brand safety, all those areas which make them nervous, but ultimately can be handled.
Okay, let's talk about the big challenge, I guess, which is scale. So, Chris, you mentioned this. Obviously, for you, the key to unlocking growth was very much about growing your reach, your distribution. If you are a smallish channel and you're not delivering that much reach, how do you make money? Not suggesting you are, just wondering for your thoughts on this topic.
That's the question again.
I think how you, as a smaller channel, you're clearly you're not doing sort of ITV style ratings. You're in lots of European markets, but in the UK, you're relatively small in terms of your total audience. How do you make money as a niche player, as a small player?
No, that's a good question. So for UK specifically, it really depends what media you're accessing. So whether it's the first screen, whether it's the AVOD inventory, or whether it's more innovative formats like the QR coding. So there's a number of different touch points that the advertisers can access. But yeah, absolutely, in terms of the growth, I mentioned this about the distribution, but it's working with publisher partners to providing branded content beyond our own app. We do that successfully with the likes of LG and Samsung, but also working with publisher partners beyond that. So within our own ecosystem is incorporating more channels that we can host within our own platform as well. So it's all a combination of our own app, but also distribution across other brands as well.
I think
To step in there, I think also, Rakuten work with ourselves, where we work with a number of streaming businesses and we help aggregate the inventory to create scale in that way. So it's a single platform with lots of different types of publishers on there, but the scale is significant just because we're pulling stuff together. So that's certainly how you can generate, scale and revenue, even if you are a small player.
That helps to sell them, but it doesn't necessarily give Chris a bigger chunk of the pie.
We do pay him.
but I guess it brings more advertisers in that way, because they can plan, because even the big players genuinely aren't delivering enough scale. Even the biggest, only Google in this market is delivering genuine scale and linear TV. No one else is. And so that's the challenge. We've all got to kind of work out how we, but there'll be different tools. And for us, it is about being part of the programmatic ecosystem. That's how you can kind of help advertisers deliver a campaign meaningfully. But yeah, it's a challenge for everybody at the moment.
I think, go on, Paul, you go.
Go on, buddy.
Paul and then Joe.
Now, I was going to say, it's not always about scale, right? Not everyone is trying to beat broadcasters at scale. If you want to run a TV campaign today, of course, as an advertiser, it makes a lot of sense to work with the broadcasters. They've got the biggest reach. Nobody is saying that these new and emerging AVOD and FAST services are a like-for-like or a direct comparison, but it's about incrementality. I think almost every presentation we've seen thus far is about how a younger audience is now leaning into these types of services. So it's about how can an advertiser or their agency plan traditional broadcast alongside AVOD and FAST services. But then you have to be able to measure, and we know that's still quite difficult. But another area where we're going to see massive growth in these services and their addressable inventory is in the fact that TV manufacturers are making it much easier for consumers to discover AVOD and FAST apps. Now, my mum has got absolutely no idea how to navigate 5 pages deep on her TV remote to find something that isn't just a broadcaster or an SVOD service. But again, the TV OEMs are making it very, very easy for us to turn on the televisions and instantly discoverability of all these different services. And when that happens, there's going to be a massive explosion in addressable inventory that advertisers can then target, and then we then stop spending so much time talking about the scale conundrum that we're currently discussing, right?
I'm just going to just take that one step further, really. I think you can actually make a virtue of a channel being niche. We work with a number of channels that are small but have a very, very passionate audience, as Paul's just said. Like, you have to work very hard sometimes to find these channels. So when you're there, you tend to be more engaged. So we measure performance then. So we work with a lot of direct response campaigns who buy at scale across linear for a very cheap price. But with us, they actually end up spending a higher cost per thousand, but their cost per acquisition is less because they're talking to a very targeted audience. And for me, the future, once the platforms start getting better at marketing, is for a lot of these niche channels to start attracting more and more niche audience groups. And therefore, endemic brands are going to get much more involved in linear or TV buying, which they haven't done with linear.
I just add to that as well, even the big broadcasters that do have a lot of scale, the shift to streaming has enabled us, to your point, to actually connect with audiences that we haven't been able to typically connect with before, because audiences aren't necessarily going anywhere, they're going everywhere. And they're consuming just as much video now as they did a few years ago, but it's just so fragmented across different screens, across different platforms. So that's why we constantly encouraging our partners to buy and activate against linear and streaming together, because we've only seen about a 10% overlap from NBC Prime and Peacock. So we're able to deliver incrementality on the back of bringing those worlds together.
And that's the exciting thing, it seems to me, is that we're exploding choice. There's so much more choice in this ecosystem because barriers to entry are lower, there's different ways for advertisers to buy. What then are the big pain points that we need to deal with to grow the market? Is it fair that measurement is the biggest pain point?
I think it's a combination of user experience, again, going back to what the ad breaks look like in CTV for the last several years. They've pretty much sucked, and that's why big brands are still saying, you know what, if I'm going to run my same ad back to back or directly next to my competitors, no thank you. And then the other major component is measurement. We've spoken a lot about some of the really cool initiatives happening in the UK when it comes to measurement, but how do we apply that holistically across all streaming services? Not just speak about broadcasters in isolation, because as we've discovered, consumers are leaning into other streaming services as well, so we have to be able to measure them so agencies understand how they can work back to reach, frequency and attribution across all television content, not just a segment of it.
So let's take those two problems independently and just try and unpack them a bit. So there's obviously a lot happening in the measurement space, and I think as we've heard today, there's hugely exciting progress. Hitesh, you talked a bit about leaning in to some of these measurement initiatives. Do you feel confident that in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see significant improvements in the measurement of streaming services on CTV platforms?
I'm an optimistic person, so yes, I think even in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, we've seen significant movement. Barb getting more involved and engaged with what they're calling fit for TV content. In the States, you've got this JIC that came out of nowhere. Probably most people in the States didn't know what JIC meant 6 months ago. So, there's definite, realization that we need to get involved. There are still very big players in the market with lots of really great data, who are very protective of that data. And I think that's the biggest step. If they can start getting more comfortable about releasing that data out there and helping grow the market, and perhaps, taking one for the team, as it were, That should really help.
Is anyone on the panel less confident or still anxious about measurement improving?
No, I'm also.
We're all good.
To you,
It's a very optimistic panel.
Optimistic. You know, obviously at NBCUniversal, I'm speaking here from the US angle, but you know, advertising obviously was simple once upon a time. You know, you had one screen, one audience, one environment, the sofa, the living room. You know, with one ad creative, and then you had one measurement company, and we've just entered a completely new world, and measurement's fallen behind the consumer. So we declared measurement independence in 2021, and we challenged the whole industry to break legacy and come together and challenge the whole industry to build a framework or come up with solutions that reflect how people consume media today. And we've made, you know, we sent an RFP out to over 55 different companies, and the response has been so inspiring. I mean, we had 100 companies come back to us and say, we want to get on this journey with you, and we want to build a multi-currency future together. And since then, we've made enormous progress. I mean, we've certified a number of different partners across cross-platform measurement, audience verification, attribution, and you can actually transact in that way right now in the US with us. I mean, 40% of our upfront was conducted outside of your standard age and gender guarantees. And you know, to your point about challenges and pain points, the benefits are immense. I mean, it's deduplicated reach, it's verified impressions, it's frequency optimization, less wastage, you know, greater impact, all of that good stuff. So I think we are making so much amazing progress, and I think as an industry we should admire the progress because it's really quite inspiring.
It's very true. And I guess the challenge in the US in a sense at the moment is the big networks are a snowplow. Yeah. And the question is, can they bring everyone else in behind them so that we don't leave any channel left behind, which is where we are making.
Exactly where we announced JEC. I mean, there are these joint industry committees across international, and it is the first time for the US market, you know, to do that. But the whole focus on the JEC is measurement and currency and building a better future together.
And I guess the question the JIC is going to have to answer in the next 12 months is who decides what that future looks like and what say do smaller channels have in deciding the shape of that future. But we can come back to that. Let's talk about ad break quality then. So Paul, you brought it up. Just very quickly, what is the problem?
Well, before the IAB Tech Lab introduced OpenRTB 2.6. Sounds a little bit geeky, but effectively, it's a rule book or an instruction book that all programmatic technology adheres to. So they all build around one common framework. So up until recently, it wasn't even really possible for any streaming service to build ad breaks and sell them in the same way that traditional broadcasters have done to TV advertisers for many, many years. So I think just getting the programmatic infrastructure right was the first challenge. But that's now happened, and more tech vendors, both on the buy and sell side, are adopting that protocol. So they can construct ad pods that enable publishers to sell positions within ad pods, manage frequency better, pass certain show-level insights back out to the buyer side. So that was step one, John, and we're already fully on that journey, which is a good thing for the industry.
I think I think the ad breaks are definitely getting resolved. I think you know, we also have a linear business, and our trafficking team, the guys who actually traffic the adverts, is almost as big as our sales team. So it's a vital part of linear TV broadcasting. I don't think it's as manual anymore on fast, but I think there's a way to go still until the ad breaks are matching the quality of linear. I think the other challenge is actually scheduling when the breaks appear. I think because there have been a lot, the barriers of entry are less. There are lots of new channels appearing, and often these channels maybe haven't done the due diligence involved in actually knowing exactly when a break should start within the content, and that can actually have a more detrimental effect to the viewing experience than seeing a couple of ads back to back. But both of those two things together are really not where we want to be.
Chris, are you confident these problems are being solved and that there's a path to delivering the kinds of high quality experiences that advertisers and audiences want?
Yeah, I do think it's absolutely going in the right direction. Now, you know, to Joe's point with the ad breaks, coming from either a AVOD side or a fast side, all dependent on when the viewer comes into that program. So if it's on demand, of course, you've got a pre-roll and you've got the mid-rolls all the way through. And those are being a lot more easier to manage, certainly when we launch. But with the fast development of fast, that's been a bit more difficult to where to place those ad breaks, because in that live feed, there's no designated position for that ad break. So it has been difficult, but it's definitely going in the right direction. And I think certainly with working with the ad servers that we're all playing with, how advanced they're coming into market is certainly helping with that development. And so I think with fast overtaking AVOD, certainly from our perspective, we're getting a lot more inventory through the fast channels. The focus being on those to deliver that quality experience is absolutely key.
Who'd have thought linear worked, right? It's amazing, isn't it?
Okay, let's get into the next growth issue that we spoke about, programmatic complexity. You can see where this might be going. So, in the US, I ran a panel recently talking about programmatic, and the TV buyers generally said, dear God, there are 60 to 70 DSPs trying to play in the CTV space, the overwhelming majority of whom are completely undifferentiated, don't get television, and add zero value, while at the same time levying outrageously high ad tech taxes in a completely non-transparent way. Hitesh, does any of that ring any bells?
I'm not speaking for the entire programmatic industry.
Please do,
here.
please do. On this panel you are.
As far as PubMatic is concerned, no. Right, I think there was a study carried out recently by PwC and ISBA, also carried out at the same time three or 4 years ago, and at the time they looked at where the money's going, right? So how much of it is going to different players within the ecosystem. Several years ago, it was something like 15% that was unaccounted for. Now that's not very good, clearly, right? Now, in the most recent study, it's 3%. So there's clearly been a real shake-up of practices, of businesses, the way people operate, and on the buy side, they're all consolidating now. There are a lot of players, but there's a lot more focus on working with fewer partners that you can trust, that are independent.
Can I just do my befuddled face for a moment?
Yeah.
3% is extraordinary, and we're saying we can't account for where the advertiser's money is going. Sorry, that's befuddled voice.
I can't go into the detail of the study, but it's a bit smaller than 15%, so it's movement in the right direction for sure. There's work to be done,
Sure.
And there is still, issues out there. Businesses like ourselves are using technology, we're using people-based systems to just completely root it out as much as we can.
Would it be helpful if sort of 90% of the DSPs just exited? I mean, it'd be helpful to you, obviously.
Well,
but would it be
no,
helpful for the
'cause
buyers
the
and the
DSPs,
inventory
the DSPs
owners?
pay us, so no, absolutely not. I mean, I want to pull you up on one
Sure.
term which has been raised on the previous panel, which is ad tech taxes, right? Now, no one likes paying taxes, but if you're paying fees for services, that's different, right? So, if you're paying for a service that helps you as a broadcaster or a streamer, perhaps manage overheads around your sales team, around operational costs, around investing in technology, then that's okay. That's a fee for a service. It's not a tax. So I think we need to move away from
To
the
me,
ad
it's
tech
no
tax.
different from sales representation. I mean, I speak to streaming businesses in the US who will say, we run a national streaming business, which we were able to set up with 3 people in-house, and we monetize via a very sophisticated programmatic ecosystem, which has given us national scale and access to buyers that we could never possibly have achieved. It's been hugely valuable. It creates new businesses. It allows us to exist and thrive.
Agreed. With some of our smaller publishers, they don't have the resources for a sales team, so they'll start off using programmatic tech to help them generate money, and as they scale, they can start investing in this area. So absolutely, it's helping grow the ecosystem.
I would say, John, if you're a publisher today and you're working with an SSP, or if you're an advertiser working with a DSP, or a brand working with a DMP, lots of acronyms I know, and you don't understand how much they are charging you, or how much of your pound or dollar is reaching the publisher, you're working with the wrong technology partners.
Hear, hear. Chris, you can account for all of your money, can't you?
Pretty much.
Just 3%.
3%. No. I mean, so we work with Hitesh. We work with other partners. So being able to account for the demand coming from a number of sources, because we've got a very small sales team. So we have the demand and supply sources around us are an extension of that sales arm. So extend that message of what we are in market. So it's very much working hand in hand from both what we can offer as direct versus what we can have with our partners.
Okay, next growth opportunity on the list, live. We obviously have this kind of interesting growing set of opportunities in terms of live streaming. Is that a genuine growth opportunity? What's unique or interesting about live streaming?
Well, we've just recently announced that you can actually trade programmatically across live sports. So we've just launched, it's 30 live sports that you can trade against in the US, which is incredibly exciting. But then also we are focusing on other growth opportunities, rather, not just live. I mean, it's ad innovation to improve user experience. We've got something called our in-scene ad where we're working with Triple Lift, which is your traditional product placement, but it's injected with, your dynamic ad insertion from a digital perspective. And then we're focusing on commerce opportunities. So for example, if you're watching Top Chef, you can buy that apron and the plates that they've eaten off in real time, and then obviously use our NBC Unified identity platform to make that more of a personalized experience for you. So live is a big priority for us because obviously it's live sports, it's live news, but we want to be able to give marketers the ability to transact against all of those environments as well.
Katie, is live streaming an opportunity?
I'm kind of interested by what's the definition of live exactly in this instance?
A live sports event on a streaming platform rather than traditional linear broadcast.
Right.
Are there things you can do from an advertising point of view with a live stream which are interesting and exciting and different?
I mean, I think live sport is actually incredibly challenging, which we are really appreciating at the moment because we're onboarding BT Sport. We've just done a JV with BT, and so all of this BT Sport content will be coming onto Discovery Plus, and it's a challenge. Live sport is challenging. We're not, BT aren't actually monetizing all of their sport at the moment on streaming because of the whole, when is an ad break, how do you tell when that's coming? So certain sports, it's much easier to do that with than other sports. So I think absolutely we want to monetize it. I think it's a bit harder. I mean, all streaming monetization is hard. Let me be really, really clear about this. It's really difficult, but that is even more difficult, yeah. So yeah, we definitely want to do it, but.
I think the opportunity with live sport is actually more of a marketing opportunity for CTV and for FAST. Right. I think if you're able to broadcast a major live event, that becomes appointment to view. It becomes a viral event, which is what linear TV is famous for, and it's CTV and FAST is less famous for that. So I think live sport can create those kind of opportunities, and if you're able to actually insert unique and different adverts in that live feed to what you might see on a broadcast platform, that does provide incremental revenue as well.
Yeah, it's certainly an awareness play, though, because that's why we've done this, right? Yeah. Why we've done this is to drive scale to Discovery Plus, to bring people in, and then to try and push them onto other content on the service. That is the entire reason why we've done that.
We actually started testing during the World Cup, and we found that we had 100 advertising partners and saw about 7 million bid requests, during halftime of the World Cup. So we've been testing with different, but we're getting a lot of uptick, so clients are interested in it.
Yeah, and I would say it's absolutely possible. We see this at Publica when we work with publishers with live streams. You have to be really, really careful because if publishers do want to monetize in a programmatic way, if they're using ad-serving technology or server-side ad insertion technology that isn't built for the nuances of streaming or the speed of live, latency can really break their experience, not only for their viewers, but also for their advertisers. So it's something that publishers are really approaching with caution when it comes to programmatic monetization of live streams.
Right, next one on the list then, contextual. So in the US, it's quite interesting, I found, when I sort of arrived in the US, where I live there now, I kind of thought programmatic, CTV, it's all going to be very data-driven and audience targeting. Not really. A lot of it is basically contextual. And actually that's quite exciting. It creates opportunities to engage with audiences in a different way. There's a huge ream of different types of contextual opportunity out there. Do you see it as an opportunity in the context of the UK market?
Yes, definitely. I think...
And why? Is it bringing new advertisers in? Is it...
Yeah, I think it is. I think I'll echo kind of the point Paul made at the start, really. I think contextual is really interesting, providing the channel that you're giving the context on is of broadcast quality. It's interesting because then you start on taking the likes of YouTube, who do really well on contextual sales. They have a snowboarding video and they attract snowboarding brands. You can do that actually with FAST and with CTV, but in a more premium environment and in a traditional ad break And a lot of those advertisers will have AV copy, but won't have considered linear advertising. And that, for me, is a huge opportunity across a range of different verticals.
I think it's huge as well. I think because it's the simplest at the moment, right? You can be a CTV publisher and pass context data, right? And that is relatively straightforward compared to overlaying third-party data, which currently is quite difficult. So, you know, we push a lot of our publishers to pass more and more contextual data because that's what buyers want. They want it to in some extent, mirror how they buy traditional TV. And that just helps them grow the scale phenomenally.
Panel, any other big growth opportunities when it comes to answering our question that we haven't spoken about yet?
As much as someone who loves TV and is old doesn't want to admit it, old people watch a lot of television, linear television, so therefore they drive a lot of viewing on that platform. The lighter TV viewers, younger TV viewers, they're not watching anywhere near as much, and then there's you know, it's kind of obvious when you just look like that. I don't think anyone's denying. Yeah, I don't think anyone's denying that.
In the multi-channel world, we had a long tail of often very small channels that were sold as a package.
But they can deliver, you know, real value. I mean, like Joe said, you know, legacy Discovery, you know, we've got something ridiculous like, I don't know, 18, 24 TV channels. Once you start adding in kids now and all that stuff, some of those have really small viewing, but people have got to go out of their way to go and find that channel. I genuinely believe that those small groups of people are more valuable to certain advertisers than people who have fallen into a show on one of the larger channels. That's just, but it's how you plan across all of those different.
And as an industry, we have to get used to that because the reality is that the future of TV is probably a fat head of a small number of big things and a lot of very small things.
Yeah. What I would also say, John, right, there's lots of data out in the market at the moment about the way AV, streaming, video is consumed. And sometimes it's really easy to get confused by that. But just ask yourself, what do your own viewing habits look like? What do the viewing habits of your children, more importantly, look like? And come to your own conclusion. And I think you'll probably land on a source of truth when it comes to what the future of TV in the UK is going to look like in several years' time.
Although people outside London are different. I mean, that is another fact that planners in media agencies often forget or ignore, is that people do view quite differently outside of London, but yeah.
All of these people are on TikTok, pretty much.
I think one of the big tipping points will be content, right? So I saw a study recently looking at all the major movie houses and all the kind of TV content that they produce, and of the first run content that they produce, how much of it sits on their own platforms? And rather, in the old days, it would be sold to broadcasters. Yeah. And right now, it's 60 to 90%. For Disney, it's nearly 100%, right? So as that content appears on increasingly free or low-cost services, eyeballs will shift from the broadcasters to these services, and money inevitably follows. So I think that scale argument is valid now. You have to bear in mind who ThinkBox is funded by as well. Sorry, Zoe. But, you know, I think that will shift in the next few years as the content starts sitting in other platforms that don't cost money to view.
It may be funded by the broadcasters, but the data's broadly right.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing right now, but I think that will shift as content sits somewhere else.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 12:45, which means we are basically out of time. So a massive thank you to the panel. I think it's lunch
Thank you.
Next.